Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening to wherever you're joining us today for this webinar. And thank you all so much for joining. Today, we will be having a very interesting discussion and presentations on mitigating human-elephant conflicts within oil palm smallholder landscapes in Sabah. This webinar is co-organized by Seratu Aatai Proforest on behalf of the Production and Protection Beyond Concessions Outreach Malaysia Group, which we will explain who everybody is. So again, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. So before we get into the details of today's webinar, let's run through some housekeeping rules. All participants of the webinar will be set on mute as default. For all participants, appreciate if you could kindly rename yourselves accordingly to reflect your name and company organizations. And then kindly post your questions in the Q&A panel anytime during the webinar. We will have a Q&A session after all the presentations to address the questions. And if we can't finish all the questions today, we will compile all of them and send as a Q&A FAQ at the end of the session and later on. And also please be informed that the session is being recorded for reference purposes for use of the internal organizations participating in today's webinar. But we won't be recording the Q&A session. So again, please feel free to list out your questions into the Q&A box. If you should face any technical difficulties, please kindly email lisa.lok@proforest.net. The email address is here, and we will attend to your queries. So today's agenda for this webinar on mitigating human-elephant conflicts in oil palm smallholder landscapes in Sabah. We are currently in the welcome and introductions phase presented by myself, Smita. And then we will have sharing experiences from 3 organizations that are working on the ground in Sabah with oil palm smallholders directly and implementing good practices with them, including addressing human-elephant conflicts, namely Earthworm Foundation, Forever Sabah, and Wild Asia. And then we will also have a presentation from Seratu Aatai on investigating on a HEC human-elephant conflict insurance scheme for smallholders. Following the presentations, we will have the Q&A, and then we will finish up with a thank you and a closing. So who is speaking today? So firstly, there's myself who will be moderating this webinar. My name is Smita Jayaram. I'm a senior project manager based in Kuala Lumpur with Proforest. And then we will also have our speakers, Prasad Vasudevan, who's a senior manager at Earthworm Foundation Malaysia, Everchis Enro, who's a project coordinator in Forever Sabah, Dr. Reza Azmi, who's the founder and executive director of Wild Asia, and Dr. Nurza Farina Osman, who is the founder of Seratu Aatai and a senior lecturer at University Malaysia Sabah. Now, before I hand over to the speakers, I'd like to give a little bit of background to the initiatives behind organizing this webinar. So firstly, we are doing this as part of the initiative of the Palm Oil Collaboration Group, which was a loose collaborative initiative developed by 2 companies, PepsiCo and Cargill. It's convened by them, and currently made up of more than 30 companies across the oil palm supply chain, including Bunge, Gar, Kellogg, Mars, Musimas, Samdabi Plantations, and Unilever. COVID gave us, because COVID forced us all to work online for the past 2 years. And so in that online space, we held several meetings, and the spirit of this collaborative initiatives, which is there's no binding membership as such at this point in time, but it's just a loose collaboration of companies coming together to address issues in palm oil production and in the supply chain. And one of the initiatives that came out of it was addressing deforestation outside of concessions in smallholder landscapes, which is called Production and Protection Beyond Concessions. Now, the main aim of the PPBC, I know there's a lot of acronyms, the main aim of the PPBC is to address how to address deforestation that occurs outside of all palm concessions, but understanding also that we cannot impact we cannot negatively impact the livelihoods of smallholders. So the aim is to look at a different proactive approach to address deforestation and other issues among smallholders, namely to scale up forest and livelihood positive actions beyond concessions through proactive interventions and targeted monitoring, including prioritizing where action is needed, and also understanding what are the existing initiatives on the ground in those priority areas that could be supported through scaling up. Which brings us to why we're having this webinar today. We understand that Sabah is one of the key sourcing regions for oil palm companies, as well as there are still issues such as human-elephant conflict, which also negatively impacts on smallholders' yields. Hence why we've invited these three organizations, Earthworm, Forever Sabah, and Wild Asia, to share their experiences in working with smallholders, addressing some of these yield issues and good practices, including managing human-elephant conflict. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to our first speaker today, who is Prasad Vasudevan from Earthworm Foundation, who is the manager of the smallholder programs in Malaysia and leads field teams and collaborates with farmers, private sectors, government, and civil society in improving resilience of smallholders, especially in the palm oil sector. And currently, Prasad is also active in coordinating the Sabah Landscape Program with Earthworm. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Prasad to kickstart our first presentation of today.
Hi everyone. Smita, can you guys see the screen? All good?
Yep, everything is clear.
Okay. Thanks, Smita. It's a pleasure to be here today with the rest of the panelists to share about our journey with smallholders in Sabah, especially on what is the situation there, what challenges does the smallholders face, and how we are supporting in their efforts in managing those challenges, and with a special focus on coexistence with elephants. Before I go into the details of the coexistent work, let me start with sharing some background about our organization. Earthworm, formerly we have known as the Forest Trust, and now we have known as Earthworm Foundation. So, and normally the acronym EF reflects us. And our work focuses on social and environmental transformation in various commodity supply chains, such as palm oil, pulp and paper, rubber, cocoa, and many more. We are a global organization. We have HQ in Switzerland. We have offices spread across 5 continents. And our membership base includes both upstream and downstream companies. And through collaborating with them, we strive to bring impact in the regions that we work in. So in Malaysia, our work actually started about 10 years ago, back in our collaboration with our members, especially Nestle, in exploring the implementation of the no deforestation, no peat, no exploitation policy, in short, all of us know this as NDPE. So we did so in the palm oil supply chains. So we spent time visiting, assessing, and supporting the upstream of this industry, where it took us deep into palm oil estates, mills, small farms across all over Malaysia. So through all these years, we have engaged and supported over 200 palm oil producers in their sustainability journey. We can now see that these companies, through their responsible sourcing practices, leading to protection and restoration of forest areas, they've been safeguarding workers and their families, and also supporting smallholder livelihood. As in all the other states, our work in Sabah also mainly covers on supporting NDPE journey of local producers. But on top of that, we also have established a smallholder program. So Sabah being the second state in terms of the total oil palm cultivated in Malaysia, with it has about close to 1.5 million hectares of land. and in terms of oil palm planted area. And then there are an estimate over about 30,000 independent smallholders depending on their land for their livelihood, especially on cultivating oil palm trees. So they cover about 12% of this total oil palm planted area in Sabah. And as most of us aware, these independent smallholders contribute significant percentage of raw materials to nearly all commodity supply chains, including palm oil. Therefore, engaging and supporting smallholder transformation activities is crucial for companies in meeting their responsible sourcing commitments. So following this, since 2015, our team in Sabah have been operating in the districts of starting from the Beluran area here towards to Telupet, Tongot, Kinabatangan, and Lahad Datu. So these districts now forms the core area of our EF landscapes program as well. You all can see this core area is highlighted in this map. And our team have been interacting and engaging with independent oil palm smallholders, understanding their situation, building trust with them, and relationship to implement various transformation activities. So we realized that from our diagnostics, we saw diverse challenges among the smallholders, such as reliance on monocrops, low productivity, and also exposure to price volatility, and land tenure insecurity, and also the topic of today, which is crop raiding by elephants. So following these challenges, we have initiated the transformation projects in these areas to empower smallholders, especially to improve the relationship with various stakeholders in the supply chain, looking at farm productivity and increasing the sustainability practices, also supporting smallholders in income diversification so that they can achieve economic resilience, and last but not least, on the efforts on allowing them to coexist in harmony with elephants and other wildlife. So these programs now we have supported over 1,000. We have outreach over 1,000 smallholders all these years through our activities, and these programs are supported by downstream companies that are sourcing palm oil from these regions. Guys like Reckitt, Givaudan, Grupo Rocher, Nestle, Colgate, and traders such as ADM as well. And all our activities also done with collaboration and also stakeholders ranging from upstream producers such as IGM plantations, and also working closely with local NGOs like Seratu Aatai and government agencies such as MPOB, Malaysian Palm Oil Board, Sabah Wildlife Department, Peladang, and also researchers from local universities such as UMS. Oops, sorry. Okay, so before I go deep into the HEC topic, I just would like to show that some of the activities that we do in terms of improving farm productivity. We observe that the farm productivity among the independent smallholders is quite low, and this is well documented as well. And we can see that when this low productivity coupled with crop raids by animals, it can be economically very devastating situation for smallholders. So understanding this, we have been working with various stakeholders such as MPOB and Peladang in implementing capacity building programs ranging from group trainings, field coachings, and also facilitate the access of smallholders into various government schemes such as MSPO and also replanting financing. And from these efforts now, we have about close to over 100 smallholders implementing their best management practices in their farm towards improving farm productivity, and over 200 smallholders facilitated in the MSPO certification process. We are still studying in terms of the impact of in terms of the yield, and also how this is contributing towards economic resilience of the smallholders as well. And when we talk about the livelihood, the income of smallholders, mostly the independent smallholders in Sabah, they dependent on oil palm as the major cultivation. So when there is a reduction in the volume of the harvested crop or crop loss by elephant raids, the major source of income become not stable. So this affects their livelihood as well. So to mitigate this, we can see that smallholders are already trying, or at least they intend to venture into various diversification activities, but they were needed support to strengthen their effort and and also to kickstart their diversification plans. So following this, we together with the government agencies, local agencies such as Pladang, Department of Veterinary Sabah, and also with some of the successful entrepreneurs who are already have been playing a role of lead farmers. We have been conducting trainings and also sharing various income opportunities to these smallholders, and these income opportunities were shared based on market demand and also feasibility to start business and also the feasibility to sell their product. So we also help the smallholders to in terms of applying into government support schemes, and also telling them where they can sell their product, and we don't enforce smallholders to start something on enforcement mode, more about like we provide all the opportunities and let the smallholders decide based on how which is their interest and how feasible it is to start. And through these activities now we have like close to over 70 smallholders diversifying into various income additional income activities such as bird nest farming, stingless bee farming, and also handicraft sales. Our team is now closely monitoring to see how these diversification activities are contributing towards a smallholder livelihood. And also we are trying to understand how this can be one of the solutions as well to mitigate economic loss from human-wildlife conflict. And coming to the focus of our day-to-day, in terms of the human-elephant conflict work in Sabah, our journey in supporting the independent smallholders started in the village of Ulu Muannat. So this village is located in the district of Beluran, where the villagers are mostly oil palm smallholders, mixtures of second and first generation smallholders. They have been settling in this village in the vicinity of this area since 1970s. And we can see that due to habitat fragmentation, and mostly for agriculture purposes, it's not recently, but since 1970s. So they have been facing, there has been a situation where elephants are increasingly traveling through plantations, especially during replanting into young crops. And so this often results in loss of crops and crop rates, and this leads to crop loss. And this is a challenging situation for smallholders. And the smallholders, when we were there back in 2016, we can observe that they have been implementing a number of efforts, such as deterring away the elephants using noise cannons made of bamboo. They also use tires to burn the tires to create flames, and so that it can chase away the elephants. And some of financially a bit well smallholders or a bit more medium-sized above estate owners start implementing fencings. However, the effort on the ground seems to be a bit disconnected between each of them. So they take the effort on their own. So somehow they don't speak to or communicate with their neighbors. So this all led to become efforts that are less efficient, and they only provide temporary solutions. So the elephant was still actively present during the time of the diagnostics that we have done in 2016. And furthermore, the Bornean pygmy elephants are endangered, and they are totally protected species under the local laws. So therefore, any mitigation efforts that the smallholders take need to ensure that there's no any harm for the elephants. So this is a challenging situation, and the smallholders were needed support in managing this conflict. And Earthworm Foundation, we are not an expert in this field, and we have been playing more of a facilitator role all this while. So that's the motto of our smallholder work. So what we have done is that back in 2017, early 2017, our Sabah team seek guidance and collaboration with the ongoing efforts in Sabah, specifically led by local NGOs such as Hutan and Dr. Farina from Seratu Aatai, and also Danau Girang Field Study Center, and also seek support of Sabah Wildlife Department in supporting smallholders. So from this stakeholder consultation, it becomes very clear that elephants are increasingly utilizing the agricultural landscape as their ranging area. So therefore, any long-term solutions to support these ulu muanat smallholders will require the community, including the smallholders and plantation, to accept the reality that accept the reality of coexistence with elephants, and we need to improve their capacity to do so. So from these local NGOs and from the stakeholders also, we know that there were initiatives already happening in Kinabatangan and in Telupit with the similar approach, but the Ulu Muanat community have been there's a limited connection to this existing initiative. Therefore, it was very strategic for the Ulu Muanat community to engage with the ongoing initiative and learn from there to adapt into the local situation. So starting 2017, several smallholders were identified and they were transformed into capacity built into community teams that runs monitoring and patrolling. And this monitoring and patrolling fits in data to longer term mitigation efforts at the landscape level. And the team also were trained to lead awareness and train and also to lead create awareness and also lead train the other community members in their mitigation efforts. So the community team was named as 7 team, mostly joined by smallholders. They received mentoring and training from Seratu Aatai, Hutan and Danau Girang Field Study Center, and also Sabah Wildlife Department, EF, and also together with the Sabah Wildlife Department and other producers also have been supporting the group itself. So, and another major effort that we initiated was forming a local HEC committee. So this committee is joined by all the nearby plantations. So this provides the opportunity for the community and the plantation and the government agency and also researchers to sit together and to collaborate and also to streamline all the efforts so that they can implement more longer term localized coexistence strategies. So what we have seen is that through this committee and also the community monitoring team, there's now almost like over 9,000 hectares of land in this Ulu Muanat area is under this monitoring and management exercise of this HEC committee. And this committee have been, and the local team have been actively involved in management of the coexistence space. And they also have been supporting some of the translocation activities, but this translocation are often last effort and it's only done if there is a need. And this committee also, and this committee and the community team also have been continuously implementing community awareness activities like during the World Elephant Day and webinars, and during the pandemic it was mostly done with webinars. And so to allow the villagers to have the mentality to tolerate and to coexist with elephants. And also what we can see is that through this committee there is a good participation and support from the local plantations, which is very critical, where it creates a local ownership so that the local strategy can be continuously implemented rather than depending much on people like Earthworm Foundation. So yeah, just would like to share that some of the stories, this is Brandy, Max, and Carizol. So these guys, both of them are son of smallholders. Their farms were in the borders of the forest, and they all faced human-elephant conflict in the Ulu Muanat. So through all these ongoing activities, they have grown into their capacity to manage the conflict, mitigate the impacts, and they have developed some sort of tolerate to coexist with the elephants. And at the same time, they also became leaders who inspire and support fellow community members. So we can see that they also have managed the farms to get MSP certified. They also expanded into implementing income diversification activities. So this shows that through support and participation and collaboration from various stakeholders, including the upstream and downstream guys, we can see that smallholders can strengthen themselves to meet the sustainability standard and at the same time improve their livelihood and contribute towards protection of forests and wildlife. So from this experience now, we see that the complex issues like HEC and all the other stuff in the supply chain, like the protection of workers' welfare and child protection, all requires multi-stakeholder collaboration. And this is where the landscape approach comes in. So EF, now we have initiated our Sabah landscape program. So through the Sabah landscape program, we would like to scale up our work in Sabah, especially covering various areas of including farmers' livelihood, workers' welfare, and also focusing on the forest protection and restoration, and as well as supporting the palm oil producers to meet traceability and also to improve the NDP practices. And we can see that the no deforestation component in the NDP and the human-elephant conflict cannot be seen as a single dimension, especially when it involves smallholders. So their livelihood angle need to be addressed. So therefore, farm productivity and income diversification projects will be an integral part of our forest protection and restoration component. And through our programs in these next coming years, we'll be focusing in priority areas such as Sugut and Tongot, where there is, especially in Tongot, where is HEC issues are upcoming. They're already happening. So we are now in the process of engaging the community, local communities there, understanding the issues, and we also receive support from the Ulu Muanat communities to scale up the effort in supporting the smallholders in Tongot to manage the human-elephant coexistence in this area. So we can see that we hope that through the landscape program in the next 5 years, we can really showcase the possibility of harmonizing a sustainable development, forest conservation, decent work opportunities, and resilient livelihood for communities where the landscape is anchored around farmers. In another word, we would like to see more of this brandy and carizols in the landscape, where they can really live in harmony, at the same time practicing sustainable practices in managing their farm. So it will be another exciting 5 years journey for us ahead. All right, so, and then if you guys want to like to find more details about the work, then you guys can always reach out to our YouTube links, and there more information there. So that's all from us today. Thank you very much, and we really hope to collaborate with more stakeholders in the landscape towards achieving human-elephant coexistence and supporting more smallholders in towards NDPE practices. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prasad, and thank you for sharing Earthworm's experiences on the ground in Sabah. It's very interesting and very exciting, and makes me a bit like having a bit of jealousy that I wish you could be part of it as well. So thanks again, Prasad. I realize that a lot of people have joined the webinar as the presentations are running, so may have missed out on the introduction. So just want to let you all know, if you have any questions, please put it in the Q&A chat. There is, we can address these questions while the presentations are going, and we'll also have 20 minutes of Q&A after the presenters are finished. So please don't hold back. Please put in all your questions. You can even address it to a specific presenter as well. Yeah. Okay, great. So thanks again, Prasad. So now we can move on to our next speaker, who is Everchius Enro from Forever Sabah. Enro is a project coordinator with Forever Sabah since 2018, and he works actively with the community in Telukid on human-elephant harmony project. So see, it's very interesting that it's not conflict, but it's harmony. So already focusing on how we can live in harmony with elephants. The work includes supporting the community elephant ranger team, whose members are from the villages and are mostly oil palm smallholders who have been affected by human-elephant conflict. The aim is to develop the team so that they can become local leaders towards coexistence with elephants. So I'm going to hand over now to Enro to share the experiences of his team and Forever Sabah on the ground with regard to this topic. Over to you, Enro. Thank you.
Thank you, Smita. Hello, everybody, ladies, gentlemen. Thank you for participating in this forum. So Forever Sabah is a civil society in Sabah, based in Sabah, that engage communities, government agencies, private sectors, and NGOs to find resolutions for various problems, and then trying to find fundings, grow them into projects or programs that eventually are led by the people involved in those issues. And Forever Sabah will be facilitating them in the process. So currently there are multiple projects and programs under Forever Sabah, but there are two projects that deal specifically with oil palm smallholders and also elephants, which are the CSPO CSPO readiness among smallholder project and the human elephant harmony project in Telupid. The CSPO project is supporting the selected oil palm smallholders to get their RSPO certification in 4 districts, namely in Telupid, Tongod, Beluran, and Kinabatangan, while the Human Elephant Harmony project is only in Telupid, based in Telupid. So these projects are well within the HOB initiative area. And as you can see in the map of Telupid here, it's a very important area because there are 6 totally protected areas, and not to mention the other classes of protected areas in Telupid. And as of now, we only have discovered or see
I'm so sorry, I'm just checking. Are you still there? Because we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. So through the 2 projects, we have identified issues, multiple, many issues faced by the smallholders, but those issues are especially to fulfill the requirements to get the RSPO certification that I would summarize as the legality of legally recognized titles to their lands, and the second is good agricultural practices. So anything associated with these 2 issues, you can break them out into a lot more specific issues. And the third one, which is human-wildlife conflict, and particularly with elephants, and they are affecting smallholders in Telupid area. So for the first 2 issues I mentioned, the CSPO project has been supporting the smallholders involved by providing them with training in collaboration with other organizations such as Wild Asia, MPOB, oil palm mills, and so on. And then when we get to the elephants, for the elephants in Telupid, we have identified several issues that they are facing. So first, we believe that food availability in the villages is one of the main reasons why elephants come to the villages. And oil palm subsequently become the most affected crops, since that is the main crop grown by the people, but also to a much lesser extent other crops such as fruit trees, bananas, sugarcane, vegetable and such things. In the forest, we have discovered that foods are not as abundant and require traveling long distances before they could the amount they required, the elephant require. And it should also be noted that in Tulupid, much of the protected areas are on hilly terrain. So when elephants come to human settlement, in addition to the damages, people also feel afraid or threatened by the elephants and even eventually become revengeful towards the elephants. That's what we call the human-elephant conflict. And as we see in the previous map, the protected forests are not, they're not interconnected, which means elephants cannot easily move from one forest to the next when they need to. So since around 2016, when Forever Sabah was engaging the communities in Tulupid, we have learned that elephants have been there for a very long time. The village elders, they recalled seeing the elephants in mid-1980s before the elephants eventually left for some reason. And then back in 2014 or 2015, the elephants start coming back to Tulupid. And at that time, much of the landscape have changed. And wherever the elephants go in the area, they start causing a human-elephant conflict. And during our consultation with the community at the time, they themselves, the community, they expressed their desire to take part in trying to find a solution to the human-elephant conflict in Tulupid. So that's why the Human-Elephant Harmony Project was developed, and with funding support from the National Conservation Trust Fund under the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources and a US-based Shared Earth Foundation. The project started in 2018. And through this project, the Community Elephant Ranger Team, or in short, we call them CERT, or in the local Dusun dialect in Tulupid, they call themselves the Kopi Suladan Diaki, which means brotherhood with the elephants. So the team was established, and the team members are youths from the villages affected by HEC, and most of them have previously volunteered with the Sabah Wildlife Department when doing conflict mitigation in their villages. So once a team has been established, they become the elephant response team in Tulupid, in their area, that respond to complaints on HEC, and that continues until now. So the CERT not only trained in human-elephant conflict mitigation, but also in citizen science, which enabled them to make field observations and collect field data. And the CERT is, as expectedly, quickly being recognized in Tulupid as an entity. Everything to do with elephants or wildlife in general, people will look for them. So the project, first phase of the project concluded in 2019, and in 2020 we started with the phase 2 of this project. In the phase 2, we have refined the aims of the project into 6 main areas. The first one of which is to further strengthen the community elephant ranger team with skills, with capacities, through training and other way to enable them to eventually, hopefully, become institutionally independent. That means becoming a certain community-based organizations, something like that. And this also means growing the team by training and recruiting more members to join the community elephant ranger team. And the second area we call them citizen science, that since CERT live in the same landscape as the elephants, they can follow the elephants regularly to be able to see the landscape from the point of view of the elephant. Through citizen science, CERT plan to map the elephant routes, or they continue to map the elephant routes into the pit. They also want to identify their elephants, every individual's elephants they have in Tulipid, and studying the elephant food, as well as monitoring other wildlife using the same landscape as the elephant. Then the third area, to change the attitudes and livelihoods of the local people in Tulipid, mainly achieved through awareness education programs, especially among the younger generations. And we also want to look from the economic side, where we want to explore some kind of compensation schemes for the affected smallholders to protect them from losses caused by elephants. And also the project want to look at the possibility to develop ecotourism program in Tulipid. So this both will be an alternative source of livelihoods to the local people, and also to enable them to see the good side of the elephant presence in their area. And the fourth area, managing human-elephant interactions. As we know, the local people have deep cultural relationship with elephants. For example, in Tulipid, they call the elephants Aki or Nene instead of calling them elephants. So this is something we thought that would need to be restored, especially among the younger generations. So, and this is also why we want to educate the people to reduce snaring practices when hunting, so to prevent injury or death to elephants when they get caught in snares. So one other thing to manage human-elephant interaction is through the maintenance of the electric fences. There are electric fences installed in the villages in Tulipid, but we are facing issues of who will be responsible in maintaining the fence so they can be operational at all time. So this is, we hope to achieve some participation from the communities to be responsible for the fence for their own benefit. And then the last, the fifth area we are looking at is adequate food for elephants in Philippines. So food is one of the reasons elephants go into the villages and oil palm small holdings. CERT is planning to plant elephant food such as grass, fruit trees favored by elephants in some degraded areas in the Tawai Forest Reserve. And we also have discovered that elephants regularly go into the oil palm plantation near the forest edge to eat the palm waste. And the CERT will discuss with the plantations involved on the safety of the elephants to access the waste, and also on the safety of the workers in their plantations. So the sixth area, improving the public understanding and enhancing state policy environment. This is mainly through short videos and media publications that convey what the CERT is doing in Philippines, which hopefully become a paradigm of a locally driven conservation action towards human-elephant harmony or human-elephant coexistence in Philippines. So this is it about the Human-Elephant Harmony Project and the Community Elephant Ranger team. So you see in the photo here is a team. There are currently 9 members in the team, and in the future we're planning to train more volunteers to become members. And the day-by-day job is monitoring where the elephants go, and we're currently finding the suitable individual elephants to be fixed with GPS collars. In operation in 2019, where CERT have in an operation with the Sabah Wildlife Department to mitigate conflicts in the villages. And so this is the early map done by CERT showing where the elephants go in the villages. This was done in 2019, and as you can see, the red dots in the map are where the elephants have gone over the years. And in the 4 villages, in 4 affected villages. And also in 2019, CERT mapped the crop damages to try to estimate the amount of losses from the damages to the, especially the oil palms that's caused by elephants. And lastly, in addition to elephants, CERT also did a survey of the wildlife in Tawai Forest Reserve in 2020 with support from Seratu Aatai and also the Sabah Forestry Department. And the finding is some very interesting findings. In addition to elephants, there's some very rare and threatened wildlife. And this we used to try to convince the Sabah government to reconsider its decision to build the Pan-Borneo Highway across the elephant and other important wildlife habitat in the Tawai Forest Reserve. So that's all that I can share from our experience with the community and the smallholders and the elephants in Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Enro. That was really interesting and quite exciting to see that the work that you're doing on the ground, especially with the local communities as well, is very inspiring and very motivating. So thank you so much for that. So we are getting a few questions in the chat. Again, I'd like to remind everybody, please put your questions in the chat and we will address them during the Q&A sessions. So if you're curious about anything and you want to direct it to any specific panelist or presenter, please go ahead. So now let's move on to the next presentation from Dr. Reza Azmi of Wild Asia. So Dr. Reza is the founder and director of Wild Asia with vast experience in botanical research and also in issues relating to biodiversity conservation, such as protected areas, sustainability standards, and trade. Dr. Reza is experienced in forestry and oil palm certification schemes such as FSC, MTCC, and RSPO. And since 2007, he has been focused on developing initiatives to directly help the oil palm industry understand and implement sustainable practices. So some of the work that Wild Asia is carrying out includes providing technical support to both large and small producers in oil palm and assisting smallholders to meet RSPO certification. And specifically, the WAGS bio program was developed with the support of key Wild Asia advisors and is a framework for the field programs that are being implemented on the ground. And I believe what Dr. Reza is going to share with us now as well. So over to you, Dr. Reza, off you go. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Yeah, and thanks for organizing this. And in some ways, like I didn't really just want to tell, I mean, to sort of just to focus on the Wild Asia component, but rather to say like, you know, sort of early this year, I started to host a sort of monthly gathering. We sort of ran out of steam a little bit, but in some ways, some of the insights that we got from that is one of the conclusions that I wanted to share in this presentation. What I did want to start with, though, is essentially focusing on two major themes that are affecting land use, not just in Sabah, but just broadly within Southeast Asia and more particularly within the sort of oil palm landscape. And then just sort of the two main strategies which I see we need to be focused on if we are going to find any sort of meaningful solution. You've seen some of the problems at the smallholder level, and the change is affected by a lot of macro decisions which are happening beyond the smallholder landscape. So I just wanted to sort of just keep that in mind, because that's going to be, you know, sort of where all the major drama is going to happen. So the first thing is that, you know, almost in my lifetime, we've lost a lot of forests. And most of this, almost 60% of what we have lost has transferred from forest to some form of industrial plantation. And this could be in the form of oil palm, could be timber, it could be rubber. But the hidden kind of, I guess the hidden message in that is that land, which was essentially public land when it was under forest, has transferred hands in some way or another to private individuals. Yes, they are communities somewhere in the middle of all this, but in general, most of those industrial plantations are in the control of either state enterprises or private individuals. That's a lot of land. And once you have this massive wholesale transference of what was essentially public lands into private lands, you then end up with fragmentation, you end up with the problems that we're seeing. And I feel that I think tackling the elephant conservation issue is particularly complex because they don't stay inside their protected areas. And this is where, you know, plant conservation is a little bit straightforward because you protect the habitats and somehow or another these plants will survive. But with elephants, it's different. But I kind of see them as a symptom of the challenges that we face. And this is going to get more and more acute as the forested areas, which were, you know, sort of as forested areas are continued to be transferred from state or public lands into private sector. And I say that because I think that's what we need to be paying attention to. What or where is that going to happen? So one of the things that Farina shared with me, I think earlier on this year, because the question was, where are the HEC conflicts and where is Wild Asia, or the farms that we are currently supporting? So all the little green dots were, the green dots are where WAGS is. The little triangles were some of the HEC records that she shared with me. So I was initially just trying to look for which farms were closest to these HEC areas, but then, I started asking the team of, okay, well, let's just look at it from a district perspective, which district? So Baluran and Kalupid are probably where, I think what we've heard recently, and then these are these three main areas, these three main districts are where most of the conflicts seem to be. But then I sort of asked them to overlay this against where was their land change. And I say land change because some of the tree cover layer from GFW isn't really forest to non-forest, but it could also be oil palm to oil palm. But nonetheless, the pattern that seems to be emerging is kind of clear. Where there is change or where there is rivers and where there are roads, that's where all the problem lies. Now, roads is one of those things that we always forget is, it's continual. It's, this is a sign of progress, but it's also roads in the wrong place is going to make things even worse. So coming back to who controls what land, this is, again, GFW layer. The gray areas are all the protected areas, and basically all of what you see in front of you, all the colored areas are now, this is where are the RSPO concessions. So these are private lands, oil palm, and it doesn't mean that the white areas may not also be oil palm, but these are just the ones where they're easily mapped and it's available. But it shows you the extent of how much of area is actually under the control of, within the private sector and within a single commodity, palm oil. And what they do, those borders that they share, where is the potential movement going to be? All of this is basically in the hands of these different actors within the palm oil sector. So I think the reason why I wanted to show this was that a lot of those decisions and a lot of the problems that that smallholders face is largely to do with the broader land use in a particular area. And it gets more complicated when, if everybody puts fences here, it just means that elephants will be concentrated in different areas, and that's where you're going to have more and more conflicts in the future. The other thing to bear in mind is that fragmentation is further further accelerated when there are development plans. So the ones that, when I said before about public sector, public transference of forest lands into private sector, the other major driver for fragmentation, deforestation is also where are the roads being planned and where are the roads going to. So initially, within the Kinabatan, within this group that we were having these conversations, all the focus was around Sukau. And in that conversation, a few people started to point out, well, actually, this was part of a much broader plan to take a major road across from Sukau all the way through to Tambasan. And no one is paying attention to that. And in fact, opposing this entire strip is actually quite an important thing, because if you don't, this bridge is not going to stop. There's going to be several bridges. You're going to have further fragmentation. You're going to have populations stuck on one side, or you're going to have more problems, more HEC conflicts all the way along these roads. And wherever the communities are, you're going to have changes in, where elephants are distributed, etc. So my point with this was, what happens by the state actors is also something that needs to be monitored, and there needs to be a way of getting information across so that people can actually do something about it. Then the second major theme, apart from decision on land use change, worked in the Kinabalu for many years, and I've always taken this for granted, that the rivers are always going to be chocolate colored. And today, one of the major contributors of sedimentation within the waterways is definitely going to be what happens on land. And we always forget that within the palm oil sector, that land every 20 years changes. I mean, all that oil palm will be removed, machinery will come in. And we always forget that within the first 1 or 2 years of any oil palm estate, any industrial palm oil estate will have this extensive machinery all the way through to the land, and basically all their soil will be lost. Yes, there's some measures to control this, but in some ways, this is the dominant land use. And what happens is that all of this land will essentially end up in the rivers. And the other thing which I sort of picked up from, sort of other literature was basically that soil loss is a form of land degradation. And when we're paying attention to how do, we're always thinking of forest ecosystems, we never think of soil ecosystems or soil as an ecosystem. And I realized that that's actually been the one thing that in all my years of working within the RSPO sector, we've never paid attention to soil. But it has such a large impact, not just on land, but also to the sea, or rivers and the sea. So this is my sort of profound realization that we've been missing something. So within the Wild Asia context, I mean, because we've been working more or less from the ground up, we don't have large grants which are supporting us, and this is, we've had to work with, within our means. But one of the things that we were lucky to have is that we worked with smallholders. And this gave us a chance to see that the industrial plantation model is not the only way to grow oil palm. So what we started to see with smallholders were farmers who essentially were going chemical free. Some were not fertilizing for whatever reasons, and usually it's because of cost. But we started to pay attention to them. And that's when we started to see that most of what they were doing was not negatively impacting their yield. Then came the realization that actually you could bring a number of other things which have been practiced by natural farmers in other systems, and they're completely compatible in the palm oil sector. So this was refreshing, because when you speak to the professional planters, and I have been over my many years of working with them, I always ask, is organic palm possible? And they always tell me, no, it cannot be, and da, 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 da. And that's why it was really cool to start to see that the smallholders could do something. And 2 or 3 years ago, we decided, okay, let's just try and see what more we can do. And we started tweaking with this. And that became the inspiration of what we've called the WAGS biofarms. But in essence, it was about eliminating chemicals and increasing organic matter. And these two things were quite important, because low disturbance of your soil means that the natural bacteria, fungi, which are associated with not just with soil, but with the plants, can start to essentially regenerate and start to thrive. And that is the main way that plants receive their nutrients. And it's more profound than that, because it goes back to how life on land actually began. And if it wasn't for bacteria and fungi, we would not have any life on land. So recognizing this was quite important. But basically for the farmers, it was just treat your soils with care and put more organic matter in. And lo and behold, microorganisms started to boost. And the key factor with any of this is that you need more fungi in your system. So perennial systems like oil palm are great. And it also means you want more wood. So this gave the justification for why trees were actually a natural complement in palm, especially when you understand the sort of biological basis behind this. And with that came, well, you could do different things with different trees. You could, this whole idea of intercropping with trees suddenly became not something nice to do, but actually it made sense from a plant nutrition point of view, and also what we could encourage as a way of generating more money for the same area that you actually have. And we started to find examples of this. And this idea that you have, for our farmers, there was a gain already from, being, there were some gains from being RSPO certified, and they started having income from there. But then you also had additional income from their trees, but may not be today, but it could be at the end of their life cycle, which was also good. But in the meantime, it was food for the microbes below ground, which is good, and that's good for the plants. So one of our COVID projects was actually starting to look at some of the economic impacts of all this. And the short of this kind of waterfall diagram was that most farmers are stuck with a certain, kind of their farm gate price, and this is an average over a period. And we started to look at, what are the actual premiums, even if they do get it, and it's really not much. The real game changer seemed to be by eliminating chemical fertilizers. That was your first major boost in terms of where you're actually going to get some gains. The rest of them, yeah, maybe carbon, maybe premiums. But the next big thing, and I think this is where the intercropping idea, but the intercropping of shade tolerant plants is important, because now you then have a space for adding other crops within the palm oil space. But remember, getting here needs a mindset shift. So this idea that RSPO certification is, for us, is our way of engaging, because otherwise no one's going to work with you. No one's going to work with us. Number two is, once you're in, it's about getting across this idea that biological farming is actually better for you and you'll actually make more money. And then thirdly is bringing in some of that integrated stuff. So we think that there's actually a lot more here in this. And this idea that if you can make farmers more money, then there will be more resources to start solving their own problems. Because being small means you're limiting yourself with one or two income sources. Then the third one was, whilst we're busy getting our heads down and interacting with farmers and figuring all those things out, that realization that big changes are beyond us. And this was one of the conclusions from the Kinabatangan Bio Collective, was that we need a larger kind of defined area which defines all of these areas that we're working in. And in some ways, I use the HCV the HCV framework. So basically, there was no reason why much of the forested areas that remain are not necessarily part of one large ecosystem. And it could be this name, it could be any other name, but this idea that this is probably your last remaining area where it has very little disturbance compared to other parts of Borneo. And where you've got this natural connectivity and you've got the different ecosystems represented, these are all very important things. And there's no reason why this could not be called, this could not be the HCVs of Eastern Sabah. And when you start then looking at the definition, it more or less ticks all the boxes. You've got different ecosystems, you've got different economic dependency on these natural areas, including water, which goes to the other side. And then you find that everyone is working in this space. But it was just interesting that those who work in the Kinabatangan side are not so familiar with what's happening in the south. But now with the ecosystem connecting everybody, it starts making sense why everyone's work is actually important. So in terms of putting this all together, I think basically I could sum it up in sort of two major dimensions. I think on the macro level, we need effort to recognize this whole Eastern Sabah region. And it has to be of international significance, because you will end up with these road projects. You will end up with housing being planned in funny places, and all of which is going to impact on everything that has been invested in this area. Number two is that it's clear that you need different strategies. Not all projects, and sometimes you need a mechanism to pool resources to put them into projects that no one's even thinking about, because maybe that's also the solution. And that's also something that's quite difficult. There's so much funding going off in different directions, and some of it's great, but then at the end of the day, was it strategic, and did we get the results that we need or not? Question mark. And then thirdly, there is a gap in terms of a sort of monitoring system that is actually working and is of a fine enough resolution that every stakeholder can be informed. And there's an enormous amount of money being spent by different brands on what they're doing, and I do this, and I can monitor the trees and blah, blah, blah. But if it doesn't inform decision making, if it doesn't help us plan, if it doesn't help us see which areas we should be paying attention, then all that is for naught, because this is going to still continue to go. And then at the micro level, what we've seen with the work that we've been doing on the biofarm side is this idea of biological farming is your best friend. And it doesn't matter whether it's the little things. Actually, it's a nice contrast between the little things and the big things, the elephants that wander through. But it's almost like we need a new generation of field agents, and one that can actually start to engage and work and help with the farmers on a practical level, because the evidence of what our biofarms are already starting to happen, and some of these we are supporting directly. So the examples are there. It's just we need to have people to engage other people and show them what to do. And then thirdly, sort of an idea that started to float in my head, that because there's already an existing system within the RSPO network in terms of how to get credit, or how do buyers support farmers, this idea of adding extra premiums in there or something, or it could be one way of directly financing some of these schemes that we would like to see happening. Whether it's a sort of broader protection for crops, or maybe it could be investing in a community-wide program or something. But those are things which are actually already available and could be a mechanism that we could kind of tap into. So anyway, so that was kind of like the sum of what the insights that I wanted to share. And then just finally on the comparing this to what are the SDG goals, I then realized that everything that you do on land, in the way that's affecting trade, affecting the way influencing regen ag, and the impact on ecosystems, you're actually impacting already on a number of these major SDG goals. So I think I'll leave it at that. Mita.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Reza. That was really informative about, not just looking at directly what is the issue with, human-elephant conflict, but what are also those other factors that can eventually support to address that among smallholders as well, looking at alternative livelihoods and then looking at where their expenses are. No, that was great. Thank you so much, Dr. Reza. So now we'll move on to our last but not least presenter for today from Seratu Aatai, who is our co-organizer for this webinar, Dr. Nurza Farina Osman, let me just start off by saying firstly that elephants are very close to her heart and she plans to continue with these species in the future. She is the founder of Seratu Aatai and the senior lecturer at University Malaya Sabah, University Malaysia Sabah, and then founder with the mission to create a society that is willing and capable to take responsibility to protect the Bornean elephant in Sabah. She has been involved in various management aspects of the Bornean elephant, such as the establishment of the latest action plan. And in 2015, she was awarded the Disney Conservation Hero and was placed in the top 8 of the Future of Nature Award 2020 for her dedication to elephant conservation. And currently, she's a senior lecturer at University of Malaysia Sabah, and she hopes to inspire and train in the next generation of Malaysian conservationists. So I'll hand over to you to continue your presentation, Farina. Thanks.
Thank you, Smita. All right, so I don't have to then introduce myself. That is a very good introduction already by Smita. So let's go straight to my presentations. Okay. All right, so I guess all of us are here today because we are concerned, or we want to try to create some sort of sustainability for one of the most important industry for our country. And then it's really I think when I go back all this while I'm wearing like elephant's hat, I never get myself to try to understand the industry better. But the more I work with the elephants issues, the more I realize that somehow I have to start working with this industry, especially to help the smallholders, because the independent smallholders, because they don't receive a lot of support. And then through these two certification, MSPO and RSPO, we can see that protecting environment and biodiversity is quite important, because both certification really emphasize on this principle. And I think the only guidelines that I saw in RSPO website they used was published by WWF in 2005. So it's quite kind of outdated. There are more and more findings, new research to help us how to manage conflicts with elephants especially. So when I read the report produced by Forever Sabah about one of the major, and this is already presented by Enro, that and all the other presenters, that elephants living with the elephants is quite a big challenge for the smallholders. Obviously, because they're scared, it's big, and almost all the time we thought that the elephants will kind of attack. We always use the word attack or charge us, even though they sometimes just trying to pass through their home range. So a little bit about this, the distribution of our elephants. They are managed in 3 managed elephant ranges in Sabah. So their distribution range is quite limited only to the east coast of Sabah, where this area also are very suitable to plant oil palm plantations. Lowland, flat land is very suitable. So there are a lot of competition for the same resources, which is land. And we can see that there are two managed elephant ranges that are isolated from the biggest MER. Lower Kinabatangan are surrounded with the oil palm as well as tabin. So, and if you can see in the biggest population, which is about 1,000 elephants, there are also a lot of development already happening. So basically, we are it's really a big competition between people and elephants to share the land together. And one of the latest study by from our colleagues, which is also authored by one of our colleagues in Sabah, which published recently, showed that actually oil palm is one of the prime habitats for the elephants. And also, they are like Reza just saved a lot of my time to explain why conflicts happen. Obviously, there are still a lot of mega infrastructure development that can still threats the elephants populations. So basically, a lot of people, we misunderstood the elephants. If we can conclude elephants, if we want to describe the elephant in just these four kind of short terms, like beans, they are big, so they need a lot of food to eat. So, and then they are also intelligent. So basically, whatever we do to mitigate or to stop them from going where they want to go or they need to go will be not useful. If they still need to go, then they will find their way to do that. And they're also nomad, because obviously they need to go and find food to fulfill their needs, and also to find mates and things like that. And they are very social. So basically, the females are behaving differently from the males and things like this. So that's why we are having a lot of difficulties to find the best mitigation. If we want to really stop the elephant from doing what they want to do, I think that will be a failure. So the latest definition by the IUCN SSE Human Wildlife Conflict Task Force is that human wildlife conflicts is actually a struggles that emerge when the wildlife poses actual or perceived direct and recurring threats to human interests or needs, and then that lead to the disagreement between groups of people, and it give negative impact to people or the wildlife. So basically, if we want to understand the conflicts, there are kind of three levels of conflicts. It started with just elephants or other wildlife comes and then starts to eat on your crops, or damage your houses, and then when you report to the wildlife, to the authority or to other people who has authority with managing this, then they ignore, or you're not feel satisfied, then it moves to the second part of conflicts, which is the underlying conflicts. And then you have the other the worst conflicts, which is the deep rooted conflict, which I don't think is happening in Sabah. So basically in Sabah, we are only in these two levels of conflicts, which is still okay. Where, for example, with the dispute one, we can still think about some sort of mitigation methods. And then for the underlying conflict, we just need to go and start to work together and find the best solution. But when we did a survey in 2019 with most of the smallholders, a lot of them said that they still respect the elephants. They still think that the elephants are important, as long as the elephants are not in their backyard. in their backyard. So basically, they don't really have the confidence and the skills and on how to deal with the presence of the elephants. So so basically, I think some of you who join us today perhaps wants to listen, some sort of mitigate the best mitigation methods. But I'm sorry to say that there is no silver bullet solution for conflicts. We have to, like all of the projects that started working with different communities. If we want to come out with if we want to successfully manage the human and elephants conflicts, first of all, we need to kind of plan. These are the three principles. We need to understand the stakeholders who's living in those area, and we need to understand, not only elephants' behavior, we need to understand as well the human behavior and also the culture and history of the community. And then we need to assess, what are the kind of ecological why the elephants are coming there, for example, and then whether we need to think about the theory of change, like what are the best activities to do to approach those problems, and most importantly to plan for monitoring and evaluation, and then we take action. So these are the three kind of principles for those who are working with different communities, if you want to kind of find the best way how to manage conflicts. So basically in this presentation, I won't be able to share with you, if you should put electric fencing or if you should have the cert team and things like this. It really depends on the community that you are working with. But I want to so those are kind of physical barriers which will again stop the elephants. But somehow there are elephants, for example, although we already put the electric fencing, the male elephants are more adventurous, and they will do anything just to make sure that they can eat a lot so that they can reproduce. So somehow, as much as we put all the techniques, we use all the techniques, somehow we will still have one or two damages and things like this. So this is where we need some kind of monetary assistance to help our smallholders. So in 2020, we managed to secure a grant, a small grant from GEF through their SGP small grant program to kind of develop the livelihood insurance for elephants. And I'm not alone in this project. My partners are from Hutanki OCP and actuarial partners based in KL, and also with the International Institute for Environment and Development in the UK. So there are already 2 live projects in Sri Lanka and also in Kenya. So the one in Sabah is the youngest one, the youngest project right now. So these are my collaborators from the different organizations. So the idea of this project is very simple. We want to develop this insurance scheme. It's currently, I think in Malaysia, we don't really have a specific one for this. I think there are a couple of big players who already have some sort of coverage for their crops, but not for the smallholders. So we want to find a way how we can help to manage the risk for the smallholders. So there are 3 objectives. We are currently at the product design stage. And then we also at the same time want to try to also see if we can create other kind of risk management techniques. And also we want to try to add source of, to create some sort of additional source of income for these smallholders. So for the product design, unfortunately we don't really have a very good data. We use some data from Sabah Wild Asia department, but we need to to understand the intensity and severity of the conflicts. We need like more data. So that one we have to kind of improve the way we take the conflict data. And also we try to work with MPOB to identify which smallholders which are registered with MPOB who are involved with conflicts, which their farms are within the HEC hotspots area. And then while we're doing that, we have to start working with something. So we are using some data from our partners. So for example, from Melangking Opang Plantations, and also a published thesis by Aida Abdul Ghani from Sime Darby. So these 2 data, the 2 data from MOPP and SAMDABI really help us to try to work on something. And we are hopefully in the near future to work with Wild Asia, Earthworm Foundation, or Forest Sabah to improve or to add more data so that we can come up with a very good product which can be beneficial for the smallholders as well as for the insurance company. So in terms of, so what from the data that we gathered so far, we think that the best way to help the smallholders are not buying, giving them money, but instead give them a better grade of seedling so that they can have hopefully better yields and things like this. But at the same time, we want to also try to attract the smallholders who are not involved directly with conflict so that the premium rates will not be so high. So we propose also to include personal accident coverage, so that right now we are hoping that by having this, then the smallholders will be able to continue doing their works and their life, although they have some sort of uh, they are involved in accidents and things like this. And right now, using this small sets of data, we managed to get attention from Allianz. And hopefully, once we have stronger data, then we can continue working with Allianz to come up with a better, the best product, and we can start pilot the project. In terms of risk management as well for the smallholders, we want to try to see, the other risk management. So for example, like Reza said, the most important thing is the land use planning. So currently our project, we are working at the Kinabatangan landscape. We have, together with the Kinabatangan district office, we have created a task force. So in this task force, we are trying to work together with the three main stakeholders, which is the local communities, the oil palm plantations, and also with other NGOs working in Kinabatangan. So hopefully we can start now managing elephants in at the landscape level rather than at the plantation level or at the village level. And then we also we created community honorary wildlife warden because as shown by the CERT team in Telupit, it is a very good model to be the first kind of frontliner to make sure to, because they will be trained on elephants behavior, so they understand how to control the elephants. So they will have to make sure that the elephants are not being injured, or they know where and how to push the elephant back to the right area. And then in terms of electric fencing, we are trying to plan for integrated electric fencing rather than everyone fence up their boundary. So then it will hopefully reduce it will help the movement of elephants at the landscape level. And then we trying to also introduce elephant behavior, try to make sure people understand the sign of elephant behavior so that they can have a little bit of confidence, so they won't think that elephants will attack them all the time. So for the additional source of income, we don't, Seratu Aatai, we don't have this we don't know anything basically about this, so we are going to try to work with our colleagues and try to find out if we can add all of this into the project. So those are, we are currently at that stage, but going forward there are still a lot of challenges, and these are the only 4 recognized by our other live project in Kenya and also in Sri Lanka. They are already advanced in their project, so they are trying to try to solve one by one of these 4 main challenges. We in Sabah are not yet at that stage, but we think that once we have something ready, we need all of the partners, stakeholders in the supply chain to work with us so that we can really help our smallholders to achieve the sustainability. So, we need the mills, we need everyone who the end users and things to work together with us. So before I end, I would like to thank all, for Sabah Wild Asia Department, the government of Sabah and MPOB for their continuous support, and then for our sponsors for believing in us. And yeah, if you have anything else to ask, you can also contact us at this email address. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Farina, for your presentations. And thanks to all our presenters for sharing their experience and sharing their information, their initiatives on the ground. And, this is giving us a lot of hope that we can improve things on the ground, both for the farmers and for the elephants and for the ecosystems and the environment as well. So can finally see that the Q&A box is warming up, which is great. And some answers have been already addressed. So what I'll do is I'll read out the question and I'll read out the answers as well as any associating comments as well. So the first question that came through was that, has there been much progress?
Okay, thank you very much, all the panelists. I really appreciate your time and your insights on the challenges facing by our smallholders. Like I said, the resources are very, very limited, but Sabah still have a lot of hope. When people speak about Borneo, they imagine wildlife and forests, and I think we still have a lot of chances to keep that. And the only way we can conserve elephants is by trying to share the resources, mainly the land, with them. And a lot of good efforts are happening. So let's try to keep working together, and we hope that all of the participants here will keep supporting this work, and we look forward to work with all of you directly or indirectly. And thank you, Proforest, for again helping Seratu Aatai doing this great webinar. Thanks, Mita.
You're welcome. And I'd like to extend a thank you as well to our panelists and to Farina for, this came out of a very casual discussion between the two of us, and I'm glad it came out to this. So thanks again to everybody. And thanks to all the participants. Thank you for all the questions. It's given us a lot of food for thought as well. And we do hope that we are able to continue having these sessions as well as we progress forward as well. So thank you all and have a great evening, day, morning, wherever you are. Thanks a lot and see you all soon.